So if you're a shop owner, do you import or do you wait until the tariffs to come down? If you're dealing with national security, you're getting intelligence and you're providing it to or sharing. How do you know that that intelligence is not going to come back
Yeah.
and bite you?
Yeah.
So I mean that it's just common sense is and then we never had that and that I mean we never had it that openly as what we're
Yeah.
seeing today.
Well, so let me go back then to something else that you said, and there's a very perhaps powerful contrarian point of view here is that you said so much of intelligence right now is essentially open source, right? It's just like out there in the digital world, and that we don't necessarily or don't even at all have to rely on human intelligence or more localized intelligence gathering in other countries as much anymore. So given that, is this change from the UK, from the Dutch, et cetera, will it actually have a big impact or not really on how much the NSA or the CIA can sort of scoop up?
Well, let me just make a correction there. I did say that a lot of the information, as much as 80%, 85%, 90% of information is out there, open source, and unclassified. But that is the assumption that all that information is correct. Where classified intelligence comes in is having a person on a staff, having a human involved in an organization. When you look at it, intelligence sharing actually breaks down into two components, right? Capabilities and intentions. Capabilities is basically what do you have, and then intentions is how you're going to use it. And really you can fly over and take all the photographs you want, and you could count tanks or missiles. But if you don't have somebody on the inside who can tell you whether they're going to use that or not, or what their plans are, and then 80% of that 80% of the information that's available, how much of it is actually true? Remember, I did mention about bots. I did mention that AI exists. And the concern I have is when we're inundated with information, which is not just the US, but our allies are inundated with information, where sharing of intelligence comes in is each country uses their own assets, their own sources to verify with other countries that this is exactly true and that some type of action needs to be taken. Otherwise, we're just flooded with information. So sharing is called, you have collaboration. We are the largest intelligence enterprise in the world, United States. But there are some countries, Africa or Asia, that other countries have better intel sources than we do. We can fly over the satellites, but we don't have the people in there speaking the language that are moles, that are agents, that are answering to another country, and then that country can tell us what's going on.
Yeah. Well, so Professor, we only have unfortunately just like a minute or so left, and I should have gotten to this earlier, but bottom line for Americans is they're wondering if this sort of new era of reduced intelligence sharing, will it weaken US national security?
Well, it can. I think absolutely. Look, even though we have the greatest intel community, we can suck up all this information from space. The bottom line is that it really does, intelligence comes down to people. And as I mentioned about capabilities, it really gets into people's head. And other countries are well placed to tell us what's in other people's heads that we cannot get to.
And so, therefore, that wouldn't just have an impact on, let's say, Americans abroad, but it could actually be dangerous here.
I think it could be. It's across the board.
Yeah.
I just think that when other countries are concerned about what another country's foreign policy is going to be, and that they're going to hold back some intelligence, I think there's something that we should all be concerned about.
Well, Jan Goldman is a professor of intelligence and security studies at the Citadel Military College of South Carolina. Before that, he taught at the National Intelligence University, CIA University, and the FBI Academy at Quantico. He is also editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Intelligence and Counterintelligence. Professor Goldman, thank you so much for joining us.
A pleasure being here.
I'm Meghna Chakrabarty. This is On Point.
On Point is a production of WBUR Boston and is distributed by APM, American Public Media.
Support for On Point comes from the listeners of WBUR Boston and BetterHelp, committed to making mental well-being a priority and offering support in taking on everything life demands, with therapists available to communicate via video, chat, or phone at betterhelp.com/public. And Eton, the preparedness company. From power and light to emergency radios, Eton is committed to helping customers stay connected and protected when the unexpected happens. More at etoncorp.com.
It's about a minute before noon. This is KUOW FM Seattle, KUOW Tumwater, KQOW Bellingham, and wherever you go on the KUOW app. Almost time for Week in Review. Here is your host, Bill Radke, with a preview of today's show.
Why are the president and some national media so worried for Seattle? We'll discuss and debate coming up on the show. Also, what do you think of dynamic pricing for street parking, restaurants, World Cup games? Americans agree. When dynamic pricing means I pay more, it's evil. When it means I pay less, there are no two sweeter words. And I don't think you're confused when I say LAX, PDX, or SFO. So should we call our airport SEA? Things I wonder. Oh, and what made you smile this week? I'll be asking my panelists that. So stick around, stay tuned for Week in Review.
KUOW programming is made possible through generous support from Ballmer Group, the Norcliffe Foundation, Blue Foundation, Joshua Green Foundation, Juniper Foundation, and TEW Foundation. Thank you to all our foundation partners.
Support for KUOW comes from the Frye Art Museum, presenting Priscilla Dobler-Sewell. Water carries the stories of our stars. Through weaving, ceramics, blown glass, and video, her work explores coexistence through the labor of craft. More information at fryemuseum.org.
And from Carter Subaru, with locations in Ballard and Shoreline. They have over 700 new and pre-owned vehicles in stock. Inventory available in-store or online. More at cartersubaru.com, Seattle's only Subaru dealer.
What's the hottest new restaurant in Seattle? Is a $20 sandwich a good deal? And why, oh why, are there so many pizza places popping up? Hey, I'm Ton Venn. I'm a food critic at the Seattle Times, and it's my job to know pretty much everything about our region's restaurant scene. I tell you all about it every week on the Seattle Eats podcast. Listen to Seattle Eats on the KUOW app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Increasing chance of clouds this afternoon, slight chance of rain after 4, 20% chance of rain tomorrow, and then rain settles in on Sunday. It's 12:01.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. New York City Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani visits President Trump at the White House this hour with affordability and public safety issues expected on the agenda. NPR's Elena Moore reports.
This meeting is a reminder of the big shift that Mamdani has to make in these next few weeks as he takes on this job. He's got a background as an activist, but being mayor of New York City is a totally different role. So today may be a test for him, on balancing the policy priorities that got him elected and maintaining the political diplomacy required as mayor.
NPR's Elena Moore reporting. For months, Trump has warned that his hometown stands to suffer under Mamdani's policies. Mamdani, a Democratic socialist, says he's not worried Trump might use the face-to-face to embarrass him. The U.S. Supreme Court is meeting in private today and could disclose as soon as Monday if it'll hear President Trump's challenge of birthright citizenship. He wants a justice to overturn lower court rulings that struck down his order to block automatic citizenship for children born on U.S. soil to parents who are in the country temporarily or illegally. The UN Climate Conference is wrapping up its final days of negotiations. NPR's Julia Simon reports from Belém, Brazil, that the draft deal released early today does not mention fossil fuels.
More than 20 countries have written a letter rejecting the draft. They say they cannot support an outcome that does not include a roadmap to transition away from fossil fuels, the single biggest driver of global warming. The countries calling for fossil fuel wording include France, Germany, and Panama. Juan Carlos Monterrey is Panama's special representative for climate change.
Every year we try to rethink a pathway to a green economy, but we try to avoid talking about fossil fuels. It's really, really stupid. It's like trying to deal with a patient that has COVID, but not treating the patient for COVID.
Negotiations are supposed to end today, but delegates expect delays. Julia Simon, NPR News, Belém, Brazil.
The Israeli military still occupies a little more than half of Gaza. The military says it's focusing on Hamas tunnels. Here's NPR's Anas Baba.
As part of the current phase of the ceasefire, Israeli troops are positioned in eastern Gaza along a so-called yellow line. This line is outlined on paper on President Trump's ceasefire plan, but it's not clearly demarcated in the ground. So Israeli forces have been placing yellow concrete blocks down to physically mark the dividing line between territory it occupies and the rest of Gaza, where 2 million Palestinians are squeezed. But Palestinians in eastern Gaza City say they awoke Friday to find Israeli forces had grabbed more land by moving these yellow blocks by several hundred feet, forcing them to flee their homes. The military, which declined to comment, says Palestinians cannot cross or approach the yellow line. People who have done so unwittingly have been killed in the ceasefire. Anas Baba, NPR News, Gaza City.
It's NPR.
This is KUOW News. I'm Paige Browning in Seattle. As Congress gets back to work following the longest shutdown of the federal government, U.S. Senator Patty Murray is defending her decision to vote against reopening the government. Murray says looming healthcare premium increases forced her hand. She told KUOW she spoke to one constituent who is paying $800 a month this year for health insurance for her family of 4.
As of January, she's going to be paying over $2,300 a month. And what she said to me is, I can't do that. I have a daughter who's sick. I have a family members who struggle. Only thing I can do is drop my health insurance. I cannot afford it, and I'm going to do everything I can to get as much health care in the next 6 weeks as I can, but I can't keep doing this. That is who we're trying to help.
Murray says congressional Republicans forced the government closure when they refused to protect health care subsidies millions of Americans depend on. Backers of an Everett ballot measure that would grant legal rights to the Snohomish River say they plan to appeal a court ruling that struck down their initiative. Voters approved the initiative to make the river and its watershed a legal entity, which would allow citizens to sue on the river's behalf. But the Master Builders Association of King and Snohomish counties sued to block it, and a judge ruled this week the measure goes beyond the scope of what a local initiative can do. Now, the environmental nonprofit group Standing for Nature said the status quo is, quote, not justice, and that it welcomes the opportunity to appeal and to test the legal questions. In sports, the Mariners have announced they're going to retire pitcher Randy Johnson's jersey in May. Johnson has the same number as Ichiro Suzuki, who also had his jersey number retired over the summer when he was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. This is KUOW News in Seattle.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include BetterHelp, committed to supporting mental health through therapy. Clients are matched with one of 30,000 therapists and can communicate via video, chat, or phone at betterhelp.com/public.
Welcome to Friday. Welcome to KUOW's Week in Review. I'm Bill Radke. Hi, everybody over there. We got the Strangers news editor, Vivian McCall, with us. Vivian, it's good to see you again.
Hi, very nice to see you.
You are 1/3 of my news panel. You know how the show works.
I do.
You and 2 other people, you get together with me. You're kind enough to join me and discuss the week's news.
That's right.
Yeah, and on your right is the co-host of the Too Beautiful to Live podcast And he is beautiful, as you'll see if you go to YouTube. We're live streaming the show so that you can see the gorgeousness that is Andrew Walsh, and it's good to have you here.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Bill Radke.
You're welcome. Political analyst and contributing columnist Joni Balter rounds out our news team today. Hiya, Joni.
Hi there. So round.
And by the way, if you like the seeing of us on YouTube, it is so much better in more dimensions when you come to Town Hall Seattle on Thursday night, December 4th. I know the year won't quite be over on December 4th, but it is the evening of our Year in Review annual show, and we toast and or curse the year 2025. Come see us. Go to kuow.org/events. By the way, you might wonder who's going to be there besides me, which is hurtful. I should be enough. I should be enough. But the state attorney general, Nick Brown, is going to tell you about his first year in office and how the 42nd state plans to deal with the U.S. president in 2026. And Seattle's mayor-elect Katie Wilson will introduce herself to you if you haven't already met, and we'll all discuss the year gone by. We'll have another news panel, and it's going to be a fun show. It always is. Go to kuow.org/events to get your tickets. Shall we begin?
Yes. Any other ideas?
Thank you, Vivian.
Any other ideas for
I
what
just
we should
needed
do
one.
right about now?
I need a verbal yes.
I think you're sort of in charge. So
Okay.
If you want any of us to take over,
All right.
Andrew has agreed to do
I
so.
have not.
In that case, I gavel us to, what's the phrase? I gavel us to order. Topic number one. The city of Seattle is entering the period of Advent, a time of both anticipation and anxiety. Advent is where we get the word adventure. We are in the dark, waiting for the coming of the new mayor. Now, some of us react to this interim period by saying, we'll see. But others need to have opinions right now about what will happen in the Mayor Katie Wilson administration. 3 hot takes came this week from the Wall Street Journal editorial board. Number 1, Seattle backslides on crime. Number 2, Mayor-elect Katie Wilson is soft on crime but tough on businesses. Number 3, identity politics, Seattle edition. Even the Washington Post editorial board scathed, quote, "The mayor-elect has little experience but plenty of bad ideas." You read that. You sent that one to me,
I
Joni.
did send that one. I thought that was sort of the most heavy attitude there. Look, this is that period of time we agreed before we all went on the show where people sort of can't resist saying what Katie Wilson should or shouldn't do. I say, tighten up that bike helmet of yours because it's going to be bumpy here for December, January, a little bit of February. But, I've been watching her just this last week, and I'm both impressed and disappointed. Which one do you want first?
Oh, well, first, just before we leave the national media aspect of it, which we will, I just wondered
We're gonna stay with
if we had any other reactions to how we're being talked about.
Well, it's really easy to have an opinion when you don't know anything, which these national publications are doing a very good job of doing. Because, for one thing, the crime point that they're trying to make, this idea that we had these progressive policies and it led to this explosion of crime, and then we had these sort of centrist saviors who came and they cleaned the city up, and now that Katie Wilson is coming in and the city council is changing, then it's just going to go back. There was this thing that happened, I don't know if everyone remembers, it was called
pandemic?
COVID. It was
Yeah.
a pandemic, and it led to an increase in crime sort of across the board, across the country. And
But what about the fewer police?
Well, that didn't seem to have an effect because when we had fewer police, crime still went down. So, and we have not had, that much significant hiring, and it definitely is not, it's not pegged to how many police that we have had. It is a national trend that we happen to be also experiencing. This idea about her, not having very much experience, she's been a community organizer for a long time. She has gotten things done in Seattle.
Yeah, but that's not the same as running even Gorst, much less a major
Gorst,
city.
But I
How'd
believe
you know?
that Bruce
How'd you
Harrell's
know
track
about the
record has
Gorst?
mostly been doing nothing. That has kind of his whole thing, that he grandstands and he says he's going to do something and then nothing is accomplished. And she has actually accomplished some things from the outside while wielding much less power.
And
I think
we'll
that's
get into
significant and important.
Okay.
I'll say
we're part of the national narrative, Andrew.
Well, you'll be unsurprised to hear I don't do a lot of reading of Wall Street Journal editorials. So when you sent me these, it was very interesting to read. I think this was the Wall Street Journal and not Washington Post, but one of them, the headline involved like identity politics, and there was just like the only thing they could identify was like at one point in a victory speech, she says she's going to be inclusive in forming her government, and they're like identity politics, and it's like I actually think she's doing a very good job of not doing what a lot of like progressives and Democrats have fallen victim to, which is being painted by other people's brushes. Like I think she's doing a really good job of like not taking the bait on this stuff.
Yeah.
Like I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just agreeing. In what way, if you were to really look at Katie Wilson's campaign, would anybody say that was focused on identity politics? And that particular jab in that editorial where it had like a long, version of an LGBTQ acronym, that was intentionally homophobic.
Silly on that.
It is clowning on the idea that like, there's this like complex identity and we're sure that it's going to be good for them. When Bruce Harrell is saying the same kind of things, like it's not like he has not dipped his toes into identity politics. That's a major part of Bruce Harrell's campaign. So what are they talking about? That was a campaign that was concerned with affordability and material conditions. That's just like the truth of what she was saying. So this idea that like, she made a reference to gay people, so I guess that's what the campaign is about. I mean, that is kind of textbook homophobia. It just sucks.
How is it bad to say we want a lot of different perspectives and voices and people of different backgrounds in my government? Like, how is that possibly? And again, I know that people think that, but like the headline on this piece or on this editorial was identity politics, but that was the only thing they could point to was somebody saying, yeah, I'm going to be inclusive in my government. Like, how is that a bad thing? And I'll just say in like listening to her talk, there are opportunities when the eye of Sauron, in this case Trump, turns onto Katie Wilson suddenly. And
he just discovered her. He didn't know she existed.
Right.
You can tell completely by that.
And we're all in Seattle with our cares about our city, which I think the four of us love. And I don't know which one of you is leaving out there, by the way.
One of us has no love.
I don't know if you all love Seattle. I love Seattle. But anyway, like I'm excited to see what's gonna happen next. But then suddenly when you're like, oh, that's right, this guy in the White House could just like turn his attention and hatred towards our little city and our elected leader, and she could fall trap to punching back at that, and so far has not. Just been like, we're just going to focus on Seattle.
So I'd love to tell you why I was impressed and disappointed, and I'm going to start.
I think of you, Joni, for listeners, as what you're going to be more skeptical in general, or trepidatious, or what's the cautious about the upcoming Wilson administration.
I'm starting with the thing I'm impressed with,
yes,
and that is that I think I know that she's going to select one deputy mayor, and that this person will come from the business community. And when you look at a race that is as close as this one, 2,000 votes, folks, that's not a mandate. If you just close your eyes and say, well, what would a smart politician do in that case? Reach out to the people who weren't that excited about you. And I'm even going to throw out a guy named Brian Surratt. He's best known around here for helping then Mayor Ed Murray produce the $15 minimum wage. But he's a business guy. He's a co-chair of the transition committee. And to me, that is reaching out to all those voters, to many of those voters who weren't excited about you. I'm disappointed, so I guess I'll fit the more skeptical thing here. I thought her attendance at the Starbucks protest, what was it, like 2 or 3 hours after she became mayor-elect, I thought that was, forgive me, folks, because I know where you are, immature and ridiculous. You have to make.
Why?
She was on the picket line, and she said something like, "I'm not drinking Starbucks, and neither should you." Yeah.
So I think you have to make the transition, even if it's quick like that. You're the leader. And here you have a mayor-elect telling people not to do business with a major employer. Are we not losing enough jobs from this area right now? So I just thought it was lame. I did talk to her campaign. They had a pretty good fast answer, which I kind of liked, so I'll share it. Well, Joe Biden went to the auto workers strike. Yeah, he was still campaigning. She, that time, could have made the transition. So I'm allowed to be disappointed.
Wouldn't that make her inauthentic if she campaigned on it and then stopped?
Yeah, but come on.
She stood down once she's the mayor?
You're the mayor-elect.
And she's supporting people who live in the city. Do you know the reason for the strike? It's that they've been bargaining for a very long time.
Of course I do.
Hundreds,
Of course I do.
Hundreds of unfair labor practice charges that have not been resolved. Like, it is a major thing. And there are far more people in this city who work jobs like that than are in the C-suite. And I think that that's really, she is engaging with the people who elected her. She's engaging with the people who live in the city. She's engaging with the people who
That's great.
suffer
She's
the
the mayor-elect, and I don't think that's the right message to send.
To send to Starbucks that maybe it's bad for a company to have unfair labor practices. I think
I'm
that
not
we
even
should
supporting the
disparage them.
practices of Starbucks in any way.
And she
so
isn't
I
either.
respectfully disagree that that's a good action from a brand new mayor.
But why?
I just told you. We are losing jobs in this community like
don't
crazy.
think that
This is a
Starbucks is
major
gonna pick up and
employer,
leave
and a
for that
mayor goes
reason.
out and says, "Don't buy this product." Didn't work for me, but
Okay. What else about, can we tell people, is it too soon to tell people anything about her plans? You mentioned one of her transition team members. We know from
not
the
positive
campaign,
about
at
that. I
least.
think that. Go ahead.
Okay, you think that?
Yeah.
We know from the campaign, progressive taxes. That seems pretty clear. She's going to at least advocate for maybe a city version of a capital gains. I'm not sure all the progressive tax
digital
plans.
ad tax and a statewide wealth tax.
Yeah. Oh, state, but in the city, I don't know all the ways
Capital
she's going to
gains.
try to pull in. Yeah, capital gains, helping renters versus landlords. Banning some fees and things like that. Density. She's definitely wants more density. She's talked about child care being subsidized or free. I don't know how that's means tested or how that's going to look. Removing encampments, but not if you can get people to shelter. She's not saying encampments stay up across the city despite how the Wall Street Journal might make it sound.
Yeah, she's not advocating for putting new encampments in Green Lake Park or anything like that. That's what I really respect about her is her both her ideals, but then also what seems to me a practical approach to these things, saying that we also do need to have spaces where the public can traverse safely, but also not literally the language of the previous administration was talking about poor people like they were trash to be swept up, and that's what I voted against, to be honest with you. That's all I heard in the Herald. I
don't know if they were literally calling people trash.
Well,
I think you mean that's the sense
to me
that you
the
got.
word sweep.
I think that was the implication.
The word sweep has a specific implication to me. You know what I mean? What else do we sweep up? I can't think of anything good that we sweep up.
No.
Okay. So not literally calling people trash.
Well, okay. I will say literally implying that we should treat them in the manner that we treat trash that is to be cleaned up. And this was coming out of, let's just say the mayor's office that was also kind of banding about this idea of Seattle. What was it? One Seattle. We're one Seattle. We're all one. But then they say we can't use our parks. Well, then who are we? Those are our neighbors who are living in parks.
What are the solutions to
She has said
locking up
very
the park?
clearly.
What's that?
Locking up the park when there are homeless people in it.
Right.
This is silly.
Right. So
Katie
in
Wilson
other words,
herself said that she believes the parks are for the general public, sidewalks as well. But as you said, Bill, she's just outlined a sort of a softer approach than Bruce Harrell, and experts can disagree. A softer approach to making that access.
I would say a
likely.
solution-minded approach, saying, well, let's look at housing. Let's look at nobody, I think, wants to see, and I'm sorry if I cut you off, but I don't think anybody wants to see people living on the streets. We all want to find a solution for that. But I like that Katie Wilson talks about very practical things we can start doing as far as housing is concerned, as opposed to what I felt like was Harold just sort of kind of preaching to the moneyed class.
I find it ironic that when people talk about her approaches to these problems that we all have present in our society, that it's just going to make all these problems worse. And we're going to live in this socialist hellscape. And the funny thing about that is that all of the problems we are referring to are the byproducts of capitalism. They are the byproducts of and kind of what happens when you have a society that is led primarily by capital and by business, and we're giving somebody an opportunity to do something different. By the way, with policies that are not considered radical outside of America, And I think based on the number of Americans that like going to Europe for vacation and talk about how nice it is, that I figure that they're doing just fine over there, perhaps a little better than us if I've been looking around accurately in this country. But I find it very silly because we are in a mess that is primarily driven by the people who are in power. How is it going to be suddenly worse? Like, I've never found, nobody's ever actually been able to explain that and give really good examples of that happening, because it doesn't.
Well, we have a long history of wishing that there were fill in the blank. There's not crime and shoplifting and suffering and poverty and homelessness and addiction, and I can't imagine these problems being solved within 4 years.
No.
So I even building more homes is going to, which economists are generally in favor of. If you want to bring down the price of something, put a lot more homes on the market. But that's a process of years and decades of any change coming about. I remember the King County Regional Homelessness Authority guy, the person running that organization, saying we'd have to spend, I forget what it was, $12 billion or something to solve homelessness.
Right.
We're just, I don't know that we're going to find the money, much less the expertise to help everybody that needs help. And so it's a little bit of reason for grace to everybody who's failed to solve the problem, and patience for what's to come. Seems in order. Any reaction to that? I'll pause there. What about, you briefly mentioned President Trump threatening to, he sort of read in on he saw something on TV about Katie Wilson.
Does he watch TV? Does he watch cable news?
I've heard. And he's threatened to take our World Cup away. I wonder how seriously you all were taking this. This is, there's a half a dozen World Cup matches coming this summer at Lumen Field, which will be temporarily renamed Seattle Stadium, just for the Cup. And so the president saw Wilson elected and said, well, maybe Vivian McCall's right, and we're going to be a dangerous hellscape, and we can't have nice things.
So if we think there's a problem in Seattle where you have a very, very liberal/communist mayor, I would say, it's certainly beyond just liberal. I watched her over the weekend. Wow, that's another beauty we got there. But if we think there's going to be a problem, Johnny, can I say we will move? I don't think you're going to have this problem, but we're going to move the event to some place where it's going to be appreciated and safe.
The local World Cup organizers said they're not worried. The Cup will stay.
So on that, Trump is probably the most capricious human being that I've ever observed. So I think that, of course, the local committee checks with their sources. Johnny, as the president just referred to him, and they say, oh, yeah, it's all good. And Katie Wilson in the Seattle Nice podcast said, I think we're going to be okay. I certainly hope she's right. But I don't think you can be too cavalier about this, because the president is so unpredictable. And, we just don't know. All it takes is a couple of troublemakers here in Seattle to fulfill the president's wish. That's what he wants. He seems to want cities that can't manage themselves, especially blue cities that can't seem to manage their own events and crime problems.
I'm unconcerned with the idea of troublemakers, and I'm far more concerned with why the president is saying these things. Because what the president is trying to do, and this is somebody who is angling to be a fascist dictator and is acting like one, he is angling to punish the people of Seattle for a political choice that they made. They elected a progressive person, and he wants to punish the city economically, because Trump's main lever of control in this country, and the most powerful lever of control in this country, is economic punishment. Taking away money from people is the way to control them. And the thing is that this contract with the city has existed for a while. And if he were to try to do this, it would go to court. It would be a big, long, stupid thing. And it is a huge waste of time that
His
it's
specialty.
even happening.
That's his specialty. I actually agree.
Well, his
with you,
point is that
absolutely.
he wants to do things that are illegal, and he wants to push it up through the courts. And by the time that it moves its way through a kind of inefficient court system, he has accomplished some of the illegal things that he's already wanted to do, or he'll
Creating
succeed
doubts.
in
You're right.
something that is illegal becoming legal because it reaches a certain court. And I really think, like, whether it will happen or whether it won't happen, I don't think that that's as much the question. It's that he's said things like this about New York, about taking away money, federal funding from the city because they elected Zoran, and like implying that this man should like not be a citizen. I mean, these are insane things that the president is saying, and that to me is what really matters.
And also withholding that kind of funding, as awful as it is something that he can have some control in, or at least attempt, and then have it go through the courts. Whereas, like, you want to talk about moneyed interest. Do you think that FIFA wants to mess around with their plans at this late stage? Like, they don't want to do that. And also, what are we, it's just so obvious, it's so transparent. What are we talking about dangerous? We just had the Major League Baseball All-Star game here 2 years ago. Was that, yeah, it was 2 summers ago, right?
That was a hellscape.
It was awful. I was terrified the entire time, Bill. I needed you there to
People
hold me.
roaming with bats.
Oh my God! You remember when they had that
baseball hats.
barbed wire around the bats and everything? No, it was just it's just like this obviously is not a safety concern in
It's a
any way.
fantasy
It's just
that
a
he's
fantasy,
creating.
and it's just what he does.
I think we probably all agree a little bit on this because, it's Trump playing with us. It's Trump messing with blue cities. But a couple of times when he threatens to send the National Guard in, he does. And I'm just mindful of the many things that our city wants to do going forward. Many of them cost money. And the economic impact of the World Cup for Seattle is estimated to be about $929 million in total economic impact. 653 million in direct spending. So it's something to be concerned about. Now I know he jumps around from topic to topic of who he's mad at every single day. I just would rather Seattle wasn't on that list.
And I do think it's important when we talk about the president. This is not to pick on you or anything.
Oh,
but
go ahead.
I don't.
I'm down.
I never want to use the words he's playing with anybody or that he's mad at anyone. Like, this is all about power and control. There is no playing here. All of this is really dangerous. And think about any of this happening with a president 20 years ago. Like, it would be outrageous. We're getting used to this.
We're getting
And,
used to a lot.
We really need to step out
Very
and realize
dangerous
this is
words.
not normal political stuff that's happening. It is insane that the president is threatening to take away an economic driver for a region because of the person that they elected, because he doesn't like that person's politics.
But it predates the person who was elected, if you think about it. He was talking about sending the National Guard in when Bruce Harrell was there.
Of course.
Absolutely. So
And
it's
it doesn't.
not, you're making it a little bit too focused on Katie Wilson. It is, he looks for ways to fight with blue cities. Period. Done.
Right, and he threatened to take away the World Cup when Harrell was also, he threatens this because he has a perception of how the city works. But that is the argument that he's essentially making, that like this person is now in power. So,
but what's hilarious about that is, he gets all mad at Mamdani and Wilson, hasn't spent any time with them, except for at this minute, he's in D.C. meeting with the New York mayor-elect Mamdani. So he does he kind of swings at it and then says, "Hey, let's get together." And then he thinks it's going to be some backslapping thing.
Show. I don't think it's like that. I really don't.
On a much more important note, I totally stepped on your joke about people wandering around with baseball bats at the All-Star game, and I feel terrible.
You've been thinking about that ever since?
I haven't heard anything these guys said this whole time. I've been thinking about how I ruined your joke, and I apologize. I wanted that on the air.
It was just in the moment. It was effervescent.
Yeah.
Amber, you have no right to mess with it.
I told you I was going to be disagreeable.
I told you I was going to be disagreeable, and that's what be happening.
So before we take a break, you almost never hear me on this show asking people to speculate, because God knows there's more than enough of that in the world. But I'm just a little curious if your journalist / spidey senses tell you to expect National Guard troops or federal troops or militarized troops in Seattle in 2026.
I think every major city in America should realistically be prepared for Trump to send in the National Guard and to send in the kind of ICE force that we've seen. I lived in Chicago prior to this, and for weeks I've been seeing everything that is happening to both my old colleagues and my old friends that live there and the things that are happening in their community. And like, it's very real and it's really dangerous. And it will probably happen in every major city. Why wouldn't it, honestly?
So agreed. And I feel like you're making my point. I just don't know how to calculate the likelihood of Trump following through on these promises. And on this one, agreed. Think he's going to send the National Guard into Seattle for the same reasons I've already stated.
I'm surprised it hasn't happened.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Let us take a break. We've got we're in the Advent period, but there's stuff that actually did take place this week, and we'll talk about that, discuss and debate, and figure out what made somebody smile this week when you stay tuned to KUOW's Week in Review.
Support for KUOW comes from Eco Design and Maintenance, family-owned and specializing in start-to-finish exterior design using materials and methods that help to reduce environmental impact. From landscapes to hardscaping, outdoor spaces designed to be functional and long-lasting. More at eco-seattle.com.
Hey there, Seattle. It's Luke Burbank. Live Wire is coming back to Benaroya Hall on December 5th. We'll be joined by podcasters Lindy West and Megan Hatcher-Mays, plus advice columnist R. Eric Thomas and stand-up comedy from Mohanad El-Sheki, plus music from the Broody Brothers. You can get your tickets at kuow.org/events.
You're listening to Week in Review. My name is Bill Radke. Some time ago, Andrew Walsh was proclaimed by his physicians too beautiful to live. And he had to ask himself, am I going to make this diagnosis my identity? And he decided, yes, I'm going to. I'm going to dedicate my life to being too beautiful to live. So he co-hosts a podcast along those lines.
That's right. You are no longer the ghostwriter of my biography, I'm afraid to say, because you got a few things wrong there. But yeah, that is a podcast I work on.
Oh,
yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that was just
Thank you.
That was just maybe I made some assumptions.
Some.
Okay. Political analyst Joni Balter is on our panel today. Hi, Joni.
Hey there.
And from The Stranger, the all-powerful Stranger, but I was reading about the Power of the Stranger endorsement, news editor Vivian McCall.
Well, thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Do you write those endorsements?
I do. I'm on the SCCB. Yeah.
Wow. That makes you a big deal.
It really, in my eyes, it really does.
Kingmaker.
Like, yeah, I moved here in 2009. I rely on that it's the first thing I open. Absolutely.
It's all research.
Yep.
So, Andrew, we were just talking about the World Cup and whether President Trump's going to yank it. And another aspect of the World Cup that actually hacks off some fans of the sport is how not only expensive it can be, but how FIFA is using dynamic pricing. They can figure out how bad do you want a ticket? Well, that's how bad it's going to feel when we tell you how much the ticket will cost you. And I'm talking about dynamic pricing because, Andrew, you pointed me to a Seattle Times report that last month the city of Seattle raised parking rates in some neighborhoods and dropped parking rates in some other neighborhoods. What did you think of the new pricing system?
Well, it's interesting. So I look at that slightly differently. The idea of surge pricing in other aspects of our life is something to discuss kind of in the more, in the realm of capitalism. But as far as parking, I sort of was interested in that as sort of like almost like social engineering as far as this city. I'm a big advocate for the city to be as walkable and public transportation accessible as possible. I drive as little as possible. And like one of I think the headline was kind of like in some places to park, it's going to be up to $8 an hour. And that's like one place. Yeah. It's the Pike Pine Corridor.
On Capitol Hill.
Isn't that at night? Isn't that also
in the
at
evening?
night?
That's right.
In the evening. It was like one very specific thing. But of course, that's the headline grabber.
Yes,
and understandably so. But I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm not driving there anyway. Like, I'm going to take the train there. There's a train stop right there. I mean, and what I like about that is I like not making it impossible for people to live and work in the city, obviously, but to encourage people to leave cars behind by both implementing these kinds of policies along with policies that encourage people to get around in other means as well. And I'm an advocate of the how they've solved for the last mile problem with the scooters and the bikes. And like I'm so into that kind of worldview that I see this and I think about the people who are mad about the $8 and I'm just like, see you later, suckers. I'm taking the train. I mean, you know.
Yeah. So like you got socially engineered, pal.
Yeah.
And you kind of like it that way.
A little bit. Yeah. I told you before the show that it was a little bit like I used to be a smoker, like probably a pack a day smoker back when I was in like college and in young adulthood. And I remember being so strident. I also kind of, I grew up with a more conservative background in a conservative part of the country. And like, I remember being so strident, like literally as a high school student being like, you expect me to go into this coffee shop and not smoke? Like, what kind of world are we even living in now? But of course, like with more and more laws passing, and I couldn't smoke in apartments as I got older and older. By the time it was important for me to actually quit smoking, I was down to a few cigarettes a day anyway, because it works. These types of policies work. And now I'm maybe comparing cigarettes to cars here, but like I do think it's good in the long run.
Yeah. Other reactions?
Cleveland, right?
Yeah.
I remembered that. So I have to say that when the city first introduced dynamic pricing for parking, I was like, of course, this is just another way to make more money. Parking prices always go up. They never go down. But with dynamic pricing, it's crazy. Sometimes they do come down. So I actually think that this experiment has worked. That said, I think
we should just tell. I want you to finish that thought. But for listeners who are following us, the idea, what we're talking about with street parking, is that depending on not only the neighborhood but the time of day,
correct,
the price of parking
goes
go
up or down.
Yeah.
Shockingly.
Go on.
Yeah, but so also it's confusing to some people who kind of counted it out and figured out how much it was going to be. But I think in the end, if it works, it works. That said, I do not think that translates for me anyway to dynamic pricing on World Cup tickets or any other sports tickets or any other tickets, because all that means is that they create a frenzy and the prices are always up, and they're crazy up too, and punishing.
Yeah, I think it's a very different thing, because when you're talking about parking, that it can be a little bit pricey, but I understand the rationale, and I think that it can go up and it can go down, and ultimately it's not a crazy amount of money difference. But when you're talking about like the kind of dynamic pricing that you're seeing with events, like it just locks people out of like having cultural experiences. Like it locks people out of like going to concerts. It especially pushes like poor people out of that, just because they can't compete. So now there's, parts of life that can only be enjoyed by people who like have the disposable income or are willing to make like a major financial sacrifice to do something that they really want to do. And, you've seen, there was talk about applying that same strategy in like grocery stores.
Yeah.
And that's really...
Walmart is rolling out electronic shelf labels. So it's basically, it's things that we couldn't have done in the past. Like you print a menu and the menu is the menu, or you put the price on the Walmart shelves. But we have electronic shelf labels now with enabling real-time pricing based on demand, inventory, and competition. And Kroger and Whole Foods and others are following suit.
And I think that's genuinely like evil. Like there is no social benefit to doing that. And it makes the world worse for everyone. Like who wants to live in that? Like genuinely, I think when we talk about these policies, we can go back and forth all day long about how it affects like business and blah, blah, blah. But like, why do we want to live in that world?
But,
I don't.
But dynamic pricing does mean it costs more sometimes and less other times. So that if I go off peak, if I go to like Wendy's made a big splash for they have these new AI powered digital menus. And so a lot of people are talking about this. I don't know whether this will come up in Seattle. I mean, because restaurants, for example, it's just easier than ever to have you scan the QR code. Well, it's this time of day, you're going to pay this for those jalapeno poppers. But the idea is if you want to pay less, then you go off peak.
But we all know that the reason that businesses would adopt this model is that ultimately they make more money. So that means people are going to be spending more.
They want to attract more people to spend less per person.
If they could show in some fashion that prices were roughly the same after a week experiment of this, then it would be
Well,
a little more interesting.
they always want to make as much money as
right.
they can.
So what
That's a given.
I suspect, and I think we maybe all agree that that's not what's going to happen.
No.
They're going to adjust prices and they're going to charge people more. So.
And I think everybody knows that with this dynamic pricing, nobody's been like, it's really interesting. I did pay $7,000 to see Bruce Springsteen, but that MJ Lenderman ticket was only $10. And really, this has worked out for me economically. Like, we usually, I think, in another era and time, we would just call that taking advantage of people. And we would say, you know what? Forget that. Like, I don't want to take part in that. But so many of these corporations, they hold the power and the key to everything. So we just have to live with it if we want to, I guess, eat or see music.
And there's
which
one
is
other,
horrible.
I'm sorry to cut you off. There's one other aspect of this too that jumped out to me, which is when I think about dynamic pricing as it exists right now, I think of two things that affect my life. One is the airlines, which I think they've been doing that forever.
A long time,
As long
yes.
as long as I've been getting tickets, or as long as I've been flying,
Hotels,
you have to when
airlines.
do I wait closer to the date? Do I try to book earlier? It kind of depends. These prices are going to be dynamic. And the other thing is like sporting events, right? And I think of both of these industries as things that are propped up a lot by taxpayer dollars. The airlines with the infrastructure and, of course, the bailouts that happen from time to time. Obviously, the taxes that go into building the stadiums where we go to watch our games or whatever. And so I would say that, like I saw in your notes, that there are some states that are, or maybe some cities or states that are looking at maybe banning this practice in like kind of private companies. I would sort of start with the ones that are actually benefiting from taxpayers' dollars. Like,
so what about Uber and Lyft, which drive on public roads?
Well,
it should not cost more to get a Lyft.
That's
during
an
rush
actually
hour?
interesting example. I would consider that. Yeah, like as let's say that Red Robin contrarily wanted to do this. Like, I'm not a fan of that. But if Red Robin is like, we want to take a flyer on this, and then it turns me off as a consumer. Like, ever since the election, I've been just like not buying anything from anybody. You know what I mean? I've gotten very like sort of rabid about making sure that my dollars are not going to Bezos or whomever that I just think is making the world a worse place. And so I sort of feel like if Red Robin wants to mess around and find out, and maybe they find out that the consumers don't like it, I'll hope for the best. But certainly in the areas where taxpayers are either bailing these companies out or just supporting them with their tax dollars, we should not be trying to like mess the consumers around.
Can I be contrary with all of us, including myself here for a second? How many of you like happy hour?
Yeah, that's dynamic pricing.
Yeah, I don't chase happy hours.
I don't chase it either, and that is a choice that like. I understand what you're saying, but that is the reverse. And like really I think what we're talking about is that what dynamic pricing often amounts to is people spending more money. Not like a deal
so
to
it's
get
happy
people.
Hour. You come in at times you wouldn't have come in.
They're
attracting you for that exact reason.
Yes, but here they are not doing it because there's a great demand, so they're going to charge people more. There isn't a demand, so they're trying to bring people in the door.
But they end up with more business, so that's why they do it. It pays off.
Yes, but not at the expense of everyone around them.
There's not. I mean, I actually think it's a really interesting analogy, but I think the problem is there isn't an unhappy hour. There's not a time during peak hours where it's like we're going to raise it even more. You know what I mean? It's kind of standard.
No, they've already done that.
It's standard, and then at one time a day.
You have to realize the prices are really high. Our restaurant prices are among the highest in the nation.
Oh yeah.
I almost called this show.
Is the highest.
I was going to call this show the Unhappy Hour, and I got overruled. But
really,
yeah.
I'm doing a whole program on happiness, so TBD.
By the way, I'm just being informed that there could be tax dollars involved in farm subsidies in the U.S. Agriculture Department. So even Red Robin might be.
That's a good point. Sorry, Red Robin, you're not off the hook.
Yep. Okay, before we take a break and learn about some other things that happened this week, I wanted to know what you thought of. So there's a excellent podcast issuing from KUOW called Seattle Now. It comes out every single day, and it's the news of the day. It's some topic that we land on and really spotlight. And a host of Seattle Now, Paige Browning, was on the air this week on the podcast, relaying some news about our local airport. Okay, so listen closely to how our local airport was referred to.
Thanksgiving travel through SEA Airport might be a little easier this year.
SEA Airport. Okay, so a listener wrote in to ask, do you mean SeaTac? I've never heard it called SEA before. Is this a style change at KUOW? So I asked Paige about this, and Paige told me, well, the Port of Seattle doesn't actually call the airport SeaTac. There's the full name, Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, and there's the official three-letter code, SEA, which is not unheard of. Vivian, what's the big airport in Los Angeles?
LAX.
Joni, if you go to the airport in Portland, what's the three-letter code?
PDX.
What does SFO mean to you, Andrew?
San Francisco Airport.
So they decided on this episode to go with SEA, but now they're saying, well, I don't know, our listeners are going to follow us. Maybe we should just keep calling it SeaTac Airport. So I put it to you. We on the unhappy hour.
Well, while we're unhappy over here, do you know that it was briefly called CJAC? And this goes back to...
That was a cop show in the 70s.
No, it wasn't. This goes back to the
best
time
theme song ever.
when U.S. Senator Henry M. Jackson died in the 80s. And in honor of him, it became, and I hope I get all the words right, Seattle Jackson International Airport. And short for it was CJAC, which is why it didn't last very long, because it sounded ridiculous.
CJAC got all the ladies. So what do you think about SEA?
I think regionalisms are nice. And especially if we are speaking to a local audience and the local audience colloquially knows it as SeaTac, it's also, I think, catchy. It's the area that it's in. I think it's a good word in the same way that people in Chicago are not calling O'Hare ORD.
Yeah,
they're
right.
calling it O'Hare or Midway. And everybody has a sort of shorthand, and I think it's fine to go by the shorthand and actually preferred.
I couldn't agree more. That's actually exactly what I was going to say, less eloquently though. But I love regionalisms, and it sort of seems like maybe this is me just being an old man, but it sort of seems like we have less and less of them in a more and more of a global society. And so I like that it's SeaTac. It's been SeaTac, and it is SeaTac. And I like that people know that it's Pike Place Market if you live here, and it's not Pike's Place Market or whatever. Not that I'm trying to trap visitors into saying the wrong thing so I can laugh at them, although I do that too. But I just like regionalisms. It's nice. It gives us character.
And it probably goes back, and I don't know this, but it probably goes back to which taxpayers were taxed to create the airport. And they may have wanted Pierce County in there.
Plus Port Tacoma. Why do we want to take Tacoma out of this?
Yeah, I agree with that too.
Yeah.
It's and also that is the region that the airport serves. It is the region that we collectively live in. We are not that disconnected.
And we made that clearer with the extra airport up in Everett. So we didn't even leave them out.
So it would be tough on Tacoma to give up, to turn its back on the enormous benefit that is the fact that people call it SeaTac Airport.
Well, you're being sarcastic.
Wait a second.
What about just dignity?
Okay. Dignity. All right, we're sticking with So what about, should we say, and if you're going through SeaTac for Thanksgiving, should we say airport, or is it because people we've lived here a long time maybe, but people come in why would I go to SeaTac, or what is SeaTac?
Or I'm not going to Tacoma.
Right. Right. Why the obsession with the
I'm trying
tax?
to fly to Seattle, not Tacoma. How long is it going to take me to get?
In all seriousness, is that a problem that is really something that we're trying to solve, or are you just trying to think of the
we're
counter
speaking
argument?
to people who live here. You know.
Yes, I'm just saying that LA they probably think calling it PDX is very regional of them.
Mm-hmm.
But
wait a minute, LA has so many airports, so you can see why they want to be specific.
Yeah. Otherwise, you could be talking about Bob Hope in
Mhm.
Burbank
For
no reason.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we take a break, what did you think of? Because we're talking about airlines. Remember the Horizon Air flight a couple of years ago, Everett to San Francisco? There was a former Alaska pilot riding in an extra seat in the cockpit, and he tried to cut the engines, and the crew subdued him, and the plane emergency landed in Portland, PDX. And after his arrest, this guy told police he was despondent, that he took psychedelic mushrooms a couple of days earlier, hadn't slept in 40 hours, and that on the plane he thought he was dreaming. He was trying to wake himself up. Anyway, this week, this guy, Joseph Emerson, was federally sentenced to credit for time served, 3 years supervised release, no prison time. What say you?
I think that's fine. What do we benefit for that guy sitting in prison? We gain absolutely nothing. And honestly, I think it's very credible that he had a mental breakdown. Do I think that it was mushrooms? They don't last that long.
I know,
that's one of the things that's always kind of irritated me. It's a few hours, but You know,
do you not believe his excuse? Then?
No, I believe that it's possible that had something to do with his emotional state. I don't know if that it was a, sort of fugue sort of thing that was created by like a drug, but I think something that is far more powerful than mushrooms is grief. And the things that grief, the mindset and the things that it can make people do. This is not a man who was trying to just murder people. Clearly, this was just a horrible thing that happened, and maybe there is some sort of, we've actually, there's been a lot of conversation about the ways that pilots are not allowed to be people in an emotional way because of the job that can be taken away from them. And this, to me, seems like more of a systemic issue, and that's the kind of thing that can happen when you have this overarching problem. So do I think that he needs to sit in jail for a few years? No. Why?
Andrew?
Yeah, I don't think that there's any...
This assumes you believe his excuse, though. I don't disbelieve him.
Yeah, I don't disbelieve him either. And does anybody
know.
think that he's a risk of doing this again? Of course not. Absolutely not. He had a mental break of some sort that did endanger a bunch of lives. My reaction to it, though, it might have been tainted because of the original reporting, this story about how he had taken mushrooms 2 days earlier. And as Vivian said, there's grief involved and also just other aspects of mental health here. And it sounds like a terrible thing that he went through, and everybody around him on that plane, including the pilots, went through. And I think that's fine. But I did read this article, no jail time, no fine. I'm fine with that. But I couldn't help but to think about other people who probably have sons and daughters in prison and jail for much lesser offenses that potentially affected less people. And I just think this news must hit hard, because it just sort of seems like from the very beginning of this story, the tying in of taking mushrooms 2 days in advance, being part of it, it just seemed like this family and this man was so well set up to create this story of almost victimhood in a certain way and navigate the legal system in that way, that I just think that other people are envious of. I don't think that he should be punished, and I feel harsh saying that, but I just sort of feel bad for the people who don't have the same advantages he had when they were facing the same legal system, which is racist and biased and has all kinds of...
He got fair treatment and a lot of people
with both of you here.
Yes.
If you put a bomb on a bus and it doesn't go off, you still were about to harm people. So I think I agree with you, Andrew, in that
that's not analogous.
It's unfair. So he says, I did not intend to put an airplane at risk. I can tell you this very tragic event forced me to grow as an individual. Okay, great. Why not do that on terra firma? He did endanger people. We're lucky that the other pilots there saved the day, but I'm not feeling
having a mental break is not the same thing as putting a bomb on an airplane.
But he did take an action that would have
he was trying to bring the plane to some not great landing. He was
not trying to kill people. He was trying.
You're deciding that. I don't know that.
I find it pretty credible.
Okay, we find credible what we do, and as Andrew points out, he didn't get this. Not everybody gets that benefit of the doubt. I need to pause, and so that we can come back, I want to find out what made you smile this week, because I'm guessing it wasn't the Horizon Air flight of 2023. So stay tuned for the end of the happy hour of Week in Review.
Support for KUOW comes from Third Place Books, with community bookstores in Lake Forest Park, Ravenna, and Seward Park, offering a wide selection of holiday gifts for the book lover, including new, used, and signed books, in-store or online at thirdplacebooks.com.
And from Snoqualmie Indian Tribe. Guided by their ancestral duty to protect the Snoqualmie River, the tribe has declared an environmental emergency in response to record low flows. More information at snoqualmietribe.us.
KUOW's Week in Review is waning, so let's hear about what made my panelists smile this week. Anything at all?
Well, I smile at the tenacity of the Blethen family, my former employers, and in particular...
Seattle Times owners, and they
have a new publisher, Ryan Blethen. And, the Seattle Times is one of the last bastions of family-owned newspapers. And they have, by this action, they're sticking with their commitment, long time, many decades, to have family members run the place, and also to remain family owned and serve the local community with news. And as we get to more and more news deserts, that just becomes ever more powerful. So congratulations.
And some people rely on their political endorsements. And then there's the political endorsements of the stranger.
Not as many, apparently. But
Vivian McCall, what made you smile?
The thing that made me smile this week is there's this story about a toy that had to be, the sales had to be pulled for this. It was like a teddy bear that was like AI chatbot enabled.
I haven't heard about
There
this.
were testers. This is so funny to me. There were testers. I don't believe this actually reached children, but the bear of its own volition brought up BDSM, and it also was giving sort of advice of where you could find how to light a match, where you could find knives in the house. It's such a catastrophically wrong thing that I think serves as a really good analog for what AI is sort of generally doing in society.
Definitely.
And it was also a $99 teddy bear. Just get a regular teddy bear. They're very nice. There's Build-A-Bear. You can have the kid make their own bear.
And listeners, if you don't know what BDSM, you can ask your chatbot.
I was really hoping you were going to explain it, Bill.
I know you were. You'll be disappointed. Over and over by me, Andrew. What about you? Did you smile before just now?
I did. Maybe ironically, the man who's brought a smile to my face this week is a man who's known for not smiling much himself. Josh Naylor is re-signing as a Seattle Mariner for 5 years, first baseman.
Bloody good news.
And I know not everybody's huge into baseball, but I'll just say this if you don't know who he is. He's a person who came here at the very end of last season and immediately won the fan base over, and he's a unique player. Yep. He's an incredibly smart player, and he's one of the slowest men in baseball who steals a lot of bases.
Yep. I always wonder how's he going to get there.
So anyway, he immediately became my favorite Mariner of all time, which is a weird thing. So the fact that he's going to be here for a while makes me happy.
Very good,
dudes.
Yeah, thanks for sticking around, Josh Naylor. I'll just say this week's London Daily Mail ran a story on Mount Rainier. Headline: America's deadliest volcano enters unprecedented 72-hour tremor phase as eruption threat looms over millions. And then local scientists in the Pacific Northwest said that that's a pile of marmot feces, and that actually there was ice buildup on the antenna on a seismic station that probably interfered with its radio signal. So that made me smile. But then a study came out saying the summit of Mount Rainier has moved a length of a football field to the southwest and about 10 feet down. KUOW's John Ryan said it's not an earthquake or eruption, it's climate change is why Rainier is no longer ice-capped.
Rainier's official summit is known as Columbia Crest. So much of its ice has melted away that a rocky spot on Rainier's southwest rim has surpassed it as the highest point in Washington.
So Rainier makes me smile, Rainier makes me sad. Sad for the top of the mountain that's no longer the top. And we got to go. That's going to make me a little sad, to be honest with you, when Vivian McCall walks out, the Stranger's news editor. Thank you, Vivian.
Thank you very much for having me.
And when political analyst and contributing columnist Joni Balter is no longer in your life, you're going to feel it, Joni. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And the co-host of isn't Week in Review in a sense too beautiful to live? Because time is up. Andrew Walsh, thank you for co-hosting that podcast, and more to the point, being on my show.
Thank you for having me, and I loved your baseball bat joke earlier. Sorry I ruined it.
A good one.
Appreciate it. Thank you, producer Kevin Kniestead and Kathy Faulkner running the board, and hello to our guests across the glass in the studio. And thank you, Juan Pablo Chiquiza and Hans Twite and Morgan White. I'm Bill Radke. Come to Hear and Review Thursday, December 4th. Get your tickets, KUOW.org/events.
This is KUOW-FM